Hello and welcome to the Make Dope Shit podcast. It's a series of interviews about making stuff. It's really that simple. Ultimately, I'm just sitting down with a bunch of artists and talking about their craft and whatever they do. Really, I just wanted an excuse to have these conversations with other artists, talk about what their process looks like, how they come up with ideas, how they do what they do and make whatever it is that they make, and try and figure out some of the different techniques and motivations and ideas behind everything that they're doing. This episode is with Holden Mathis. Holden is a photographer, but he's done a variety of different things, from playing music to drawing and, all sorts of other stuff. He's also a friend of mine. We ran Heatskr Digital together, a production company where we made a variety of video and photo content. So for episode 1 of this podcast, it seemed there was no better fitting a first guest to sit down with. We sat down on his back patio to talk about drawing, musical instruments, how light reflects off of the bottom of big cats to scatter light and disguise them in the forest. All sorts of real neat stuff like that. So yeah, you can check him out on social media at holden.mathis. And yeah, that's about it for the intro. So without further ado, my conversation with Holden Mathis. I just want to start off with what's up? What have you been up to? What are you working on? What are you doing?
Dude, I've just been working. I've been working my non-exciting day job, and yeah. a devastating quantity of disinteresting content. I have not been doing much in the realm of anything fun lately.
Well, what have you been doing then outside of the realm of work, right? Bike rides, or what's the?
Yeah, I've been riding my bikes, and you saw that? Did you see that?
Did something come off that? Or?
Yeah, those dudes just dropped a big sheet of metal off the back of their work truck.
Oh,
into the road.
Oh shit! Yeah, it's just sitting in the street. Well, we'll update.
We'll have to recover that.
We'll update the listeners later on.
That'll be a footnote. Yeah, I've been doing the grind, the 9 to 5, the 8 to 5. I've been really reverting to my childhood desires and playing a bunch of airsoft with Andrew, one of my housemates. And I tell you what, it's a hell of a good time. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've been in a degree of hibernation. Well, this may politicize, but I've been building firearms.
Hell yeah.
And it's been very fun. And honestly, one of the most fun parts, I've painted all of them.
Hell yeah.
Which has been really cool to do, just masking and painting.
What's the process of that? I have no idea what that is.
Okay, one of the original kind of aspects of it is to in regards to legitimate camouflage principles, one of the concepts is to mimic big cats.
Interesting.
So, or if you look at Coda right there, how her underside is white and her top is the darker color. So the principle is the top of things. If you think of cylinders, the top of that cylinder is a darker color than the bottom. And so the bottom being lighter reflects more that bounces off the ground under it and breaks up the lines of what that object is. So that's why big cats and dogs and wolves and stuff have that natural camouflage.
Interesting.
So past that, just cool masking things and doing cool little stripe designs and splatters and stuff like that. It's fun. And hopefully soon, not hopefully, it's going to happen, but soon, I'll be painting a bike frame.
Hell yeah.
Not camouflaging it to be a jungle cat. It'll be pink. But that's that. But yeah, that's been really fun. I mean, just the the putting things together and customizing things and building stuff and like making your like own iteration of something is very fun. And I think that's honestly like one of the big things that's fun about like, you know, anything in that realm, like guns or bicycles or cars or motorcycles or anything like that. Like getting to like make a new object out of these like already existing parts, you know, is cool. And like making things work with different things. Like there's a lot of customization that goes, like you may get a part and you may have to like drill a hole in something or like, you know, cut a hole in something or like add or remove parts from there are like sections of parts to make it work in the full system. And that's like just a really fun process.
So then, yeah, I'll use that, I guess, as like a jumping off point with like you kind of doing some physical medium stuff, you know, painting various bits of weaponry or bicycles. Like I kind of want to dig into, I feel like you've done a bunch of different things outside of like just the realm of photography. Like I know that you like did some like drawing and stuff in the past at like a level far higher than I deem most people capable of. I know that like you drummed for a while. I know that you've like done a fair bit of writing. So like what, which came first, or like what was the first thing that you kind of delved into in terms of an artistic venture?
I mean, you could like go back into like, if I still had access to them, you could pull like the notebooks that I had in like middle school and grade school. And like me and like one of my best friends would just draw in like every margin of every page and like doodle and just everything from like cool like things we would make up for like lore for playground games to like just obscene like stupid shit. Can I curse?
Yeah, I don't give a shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think probably drawing was definitely the first thing that like it was just kind of always in the back of my head. Like we were just always doodling and drawing and stuff like that. But it was never really like a oh, like I want to do art, like I want to draw. And
what was the like, was it just like you were bored and had an empty notebook, or like what was the thing that started it? Started the doodling?
I mean, literally would just be like in school, like I don't know, you know, I just like my mind points to like being just being in class, like being in you know 5th grade English or something, and just like doodling stuff. And then like, you know, like I said, it was like a good friend of mine and I, and we would kind of like riff off of each other with that, and like just, you know, sky's the limit. We just keep drawing stuff. And like obviously I you know, I went to high school, took art classes in high school, and like got a whole lot more serious with it. And like did some really, really, really awesome projects when I was just like in high school. Of course didn't pull that into like college or like anything later on, but yeah, some really, really neat pieces that I was like super proud of, just in different kinds of mediums. I mean, like pen and ink was really fun to do, and like I mean everything from like paper cuts, like multi-layered, like you know, like images with like just like X-Acto out like patterns in construction paper, to like did some sculpture, like carving soapstone, just random stuff like that. But I think like just drawing in terms of like physical, like, you know, making art was probably my favorite, like the big one for me, or at least the first big thing for me. But past that, definitely music. Like I said, like, I mean, you said I played drums, and I was like hardcore on it for a while, all the way through high school, through like most of college. And like, you know, I would like be like a session drummer for like some bands here and there. And like did a bunch of like jamming with friends, but really just like mostly did it for myself, like mostly just played drums because it was fun.
Yeah.
And, like it's just I don't know. It's cool. Like I'd always like screwed around with the guitar a little bit, and like, you know, I know some chords and like how to play a couple songs on a guitar, but like drums was just so like I was completely self-taught. I mean, self-taught and YouTube taught.
Yeah.
And just like loved it. It's so fun. It's so fun and like gratifying and just like satisfying to play a set of drums and like kind of like know your way around a set and like how to get the right sounds out of things. So yeah.
Definitely. So I want to jump back to like some of the drawing stuff.
Okay.
Like when do you remember the moment or the thing that was like the jump from like doodles in the notebook to, you know, taking it a little bit more seriously and doing things at more of a project level? You know, like what the impetus of that was?
Probably, I mean, honestly, it would probably just be like when I was able to take, like at the point in high school where you get to pick electives and you get to
just like a class,
and you get to say like, oh, I want to take art class. Yeah. And we had an art teacher, again, me and this one same close friend, we ended up going to the same high school, and we had this one art teacher who like saw that we had like a pretty solid aptitude for art, and pretty much just kind of gave us free reign to do like whatever we kind of like. We would have to do projects on the same timeline as the rest of the class, but we could pretty much do whatever we wanted. So we got a lot of creative freedom in that, and it was really cool to like, you know, still be working on that timeline and still have to like, you know, make progress on something in a class. We couldn't just go dick off, but have that like, oh, we don't have to draw, you know, 13 spheres shaded from different angles, like, you know, as if light's hitting them from different angles, and stuff like that. So,
all of the like exercises and like,
exactly. Yeah. Like there's a little bit of that at the start, and then, you know, really kind of like getting the keys to doing whatever you want was really, really cool. I would say that's probably kind of like the big tipping point, and like that kind of bleeds into when I started picking up a camera more seriously too, because like that same year I you know, took a photography class under that same art teacher.
Okay. Interesting.
And that's probably like, I'd always kind of like putzed around with cameras. Like my dad had like this little like not heavy duty, but like this little like bomb proof like Pentax digital camera. But I don't know. I can shelve that and get that out later.
Yeah, well, I do want to get into that. But like since it was under the same teacher, did you notice, like, did you get that same free reign in photography class, or did that teacher make you like, you know, do the studies?
So the structure of that class was a little bit different in that it wasn't like explicit. I mean, inherently with photography, it's not going to be like, okay, everybody go take a picture of the same building or the same tree.
Go take a picture of the same sphere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it would be like, you know, bring me, you know, a contact sheet of, you know, these 4 principles, like 5 shots each of these like 4 like leading lines or you know, like backlighting or just anything like that. And in that, like, there is kind of like an inherent like built-in amount of flexibility and freedom, because like yeah, you have to capture those principles, but like, you know, you can look around right here where we are and see like fucking 13 examples of lines, or, you know, XYZ. And so we could have like 5 different kids in that class in here, and like, you know, maybe some people would take the same pictures of things because they'd see someone else taking a picture of it, but like, you know, there's a lot of like opportunity for different, you know, work. So kind of yes and no. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but not like, yes, but more due to the structure of the class. And less due to the teacher kind of giving you the freedom. With some of the, like the drawing and stuff like that, was there anything that like any principles that you saw kind of carrying over to how you would like compose photos? Did you think about that at all? Or was it just like kind of a totally different like way of thinking for you?
I mean, it's different because it's complete, like with drawing, it's like completely constructive. Unless you're like redrawing an image that exists, you know. but with photography, like it's kind of similar to like what I was saying with like working on cars or motorcycles or bicycles or guns or XYZ. You're working with things that already exist, and like you're putting something together with things that are already like available.
So with then I've got kind of a 2-part question here. But I guess if you were to draw something like, let's say, a house, because we're looking across the street at a house.
Yeah.
Like what's the process? Like, what's the starting point of that? If like you've got the idea of like, oh, I want to draw a house, and that's kind of the only idea you have, like, where do you expand or take that from there?
I mean, if you were gonna like sit down and like draw a house right now,
And I guess I'm gonna frame the question a little bit, not in a like, oh, I'm going to architecturally draw something because it needs to be like planned and rigid and
Yeah.
but like,
not like an architectural sketch, like a drawing of that house for like art value.
yeah, like a creative expression.
Regardless, perspective lines, like you would still like find like a quote, like vanishing point in the photo, or in the image.
What's a defined vanishing point?
I mean,
for me?
honestly, in the photo, like you take a photo of the house that you're gonna draw and like have it as a reference, so you have a single like rigid, locked in kind of reference point. So vanishing point would be like, if you look, so since it's a cube, if a building is a cube and you look at it at any angle, if it's 3D, like those lines aren't going to be straight, like in your field of view. Like everything has an angle. So like the 4 corners of like this house over here, those points, like if you're looking straight at it and you like drew a line from the like front corner of the roof to the back corner of the roof, and the front corner of the ground and the back corner of the ground, and sent it all the way back, there would be a point in your like in your view where those lines would intersect.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And that is a vanishing point.
Gotcha.
So that helps to like make sure that your house doesn't look like some like stupid postmodern like collapsing building thing.
Yeah.
That's really all the vanishing point is. And like, so a house kind of like makes it kind of difficult because the scale is so large. But like, I mean, think of like, a picture of like a milk carton on a table, and like those sides that are going to be facing away from you are going to carry those like vanishing point lines, as like how the perspective and these like angles are presented.
Gotcha.
So that's like a really easy way to also just set the rest of the scene, because like, oh, you might have to like sketch in the sidewalk, or there's gonna be like the driveway behind that house.
You're kind of laying out the structure.
Yeah, exactly.
The bounds in which you're going to be working within, almost.
Yeah, and exactly. It kind of like sets a boundary to make sure that you're putting something together that will be cohesive and make sense in like the grand scheme of what the image is.
Okay. And then so what's past that? Like after you've got kind of the structure and the bounds set out, the general perspective, like what's next on, and let's go from a house to a milk carton. I like the milk carton example.
Yeah. So I mean, really just like course define. So like, you'd sketch in a cube, and that would be like the body of the milk carton. And then you sketch in like that little peak thing on the top, and then the little flappy mohawk thing that's on the top of the milk. And so you've got like all of your shapes there. And then maybe you, you're like, okay, which side of the milk carton is this? Is like the front side that's got like the branding or the logo or whatever. And maybe you sketch in a logo, or maybe it's the side that's got like a picture of a missing person. And you say, where are the bodies, Garth?
Yep. Shout out Garth Brooks.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's like as like rudimentary as it sounds, it's literally just like course define. And I would say like, you get all of the like strongest, like heaviest, biggest details first, and then you like whittle your way down to the fine details. So if you think of it like the difference between like, like a rough little picture of like a milk carton versus like some like hardcore realist sketch of a milk carton, it's just going to be like, how much time is spent,
the level of detail.
And the level of detail. And so like, you know, at one point, you know, the like little bar napkin sketch and the like super like hardcore realist sketch are going to look pretty damn similar.
Yeah.
It's just that the hardcore realist sketch is going to go umpteen more degrees to like get the, you know, the detail and the shading and the like the shadow that's being thrown by it, and you know.
So then if to take that thought, right, of like, you know, technically speaking, if you had, assuming you have the skill set, right, you could just spend a near infinite amount of time detailing something to get it to that point. Like what are, I guess, once you have like the basic like course details roughed in, like what are kind of the first, let's say, 3 things that you're looking at to get it to a level of detail where you're like, what are the first things that you're doing that once you've done them, you take a step back at it and look and go like, okay, is this done? Does that make sense? Does that question?
Yeah. So make it look like it's actually, you want it to look like it exists actually in a space. Like, I mean, unless you're making, I mean, that's kind of the freedom with like drawing it, but like, you know,
let's assume.
Yeah. Let's assume
you make that decision.
Yeah. Let's assume you want it to sit on a table, or like it's just sitting on like a flat surface. You know, you want it to look cohesive, and that it's, you know, you want the 4 corners of the bottom to look, you know, level and like flat on the surface that it's sitting on. You know, you want the like shadow to look proper around it. So like, you know, if you look at anything that's like got a shadow around it, like look under Coda's tail, it's like super, super dark right under her tail. And like that kind of hard outline like is kind of all around her. Whereas if you were like blast a light, you'd be like, oh, that's actually not dog hair. It's like, you know, the shadow being tossed by her. And then, you know, light. So like, is a shadow getting thrown one way? If the shadow's getting thrown to the left, the right side of that object should be the brightest part of it. So like, that kind of ties into like making it cohesive and making it look like it actually fits and where.
But
it
lighting
is.
being a big component of like the environment.
Exactly. I mean, lighting, even in like drawing it, like having it look like it, like I said, just like exists logically, which is like silly because it's like drawing and it can be as illogical as you want it to be. But like, you know, again, like for like this milk carton perspective thing, just making it look like it exists true to form. And like one thing that like this one of these art teachers I had in high school always said, and dude, this guy was awesome. He was an ex-Green Beret. He was like, I swear to God, he was like 5 feet tall. And like on the first day of class, he would go out and like hand us out like pencils and our like block eraser. And he would do this crazy thing where he would like take the eraser and he would like look like if you're like way over here, he would like take the eraser and he would go like, and it would fly over his shoulder, like right to you. And he would just be like, and it would just like somehow do that. And he would do it like to the whole class and he would just throw them across the classroom. And he was like the most like soft spoken, like kind, like just nice dude. But like you just know that this man had probably done some obscene things in the jungle. God, yeah, Mr. Connell was the man. Anyways, but one of the big things he taught and like tried to drive into our minds in like the first couple of classes was like, get your mind's eye to stop thinking of things not realistically. So like, you know, if you picture a Christmas tree in your head, is it just like a triangle with like a little star on top? Or like is like a heart, like is a human heart just like the little like heart shape? Or is it like, you know, those weird thing with the valves and, you know, and the actual organ,
the detail.
Exactly. And that was a big thing, is like getting your mind's eye, like thinking of something and picturing the real to life like iteration of that item is a huge, like it was like a huge kind of like thing to drive home and like keep in mind.
Almost like seeing how much detail you can add in your head before you then
yeah,
put it on
exactly.
paper.
Yeah, just seeing, like, thinking of something in your head as like real as it is, or like in the realest way that that you can, is like huge to like just that planning process. Yeah, I just that was that has like always stuck in my head as something that he taught in that class. So
okay, so then to take that to another angle, or actually here I have a question on that. Like at what point, if because when we were talking about like the milk carton, for example, we were keeping it bounded pretty in reality, and like on the on that note of like stop imagining, what was it? Stop imagining things in your mind as
it's more just like training. I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it's like training your mind's eye to like see things how your real eye would see it.
Okay, so to see things how your real eye would see it. So at what point when you're drawing something, if it is not bound, if what you're drawing is not bound by reality in certain aspects, like how do you determine what needs to be bound by reality and what shouldn't be? Does that make sense?
I mean, I feel like that gets to a level where it can be kind of like personal and like, you know, however you interpret it. But at least on my side, it's like,
yeah, give your personal response to that.
Starting at that point, regardless of like, okay, let's start at like what the photoreal, like actual physical appearance of that item is, and then like deconstruct it and use that as like a starting point to say, oh, if this is what the real life version is, like, I want this, you know, not real. I want this like heavily fictional version to, you know, have XYZ components changed. You know, maybe you want to do that milk carton, but you want it to look all like, you know, cartoony and skewed and weird, like kind of like bouncing almost. And you'd say, okay, instead of those walls, instead of those like corner or like those edges of the carton being straight, you know, they're all kind of like tucked in or twisted a little bit. And so you're still working with, you know, maybe you're still working with like one vanishing point for the bottom. And maybe you take that top piece and you shift the vanishing point a little bit so that like the top and bottom level of the like milk carton are like twisted. And then it like leads how you're drawing those lines for like the sides of the milk carton and like all of that stuff. I feel like that kind of is, in my mind, how I would see it. You know, you like start at that starting point of like what it truly is, and then like deconstruct it from there.
You kind of pick and choose what details you want to like manipulate or change. And like, I mean, I think what's interesting about that is that it is all in context of reality, right? And like if you're looking at a drawing or a painting or anything, you know, whatever you're looking at, unless it's something like super weird and abstract, is probably going to be grounded in the viewer's idea of reality. So I guess starting from there and then kind of seeing how far away you can get and still maintain the idea of what you're trying to draw, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so then on the same subject, then you've got a milk carton. Let's imagine you're in a, you know, big fancy studio or whatever. How would you go about photographing a milk carton to make it look cool as shit? And again, I don't want it to be bound by like, you know, it has to be some product photo that's, you know, kind of similar to how we were talking with the architectural design. Like, it doesn't have to be technically right. Like, just how would you photograph it, or how would you? What does your process look like to photograph it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like thinking about that, my mind immediately just goes to like product photography.
Yeah.
Product photography. Where's the fog machine and the strobe lights and I don't know.
Well then, yeah, let's we can do it in the context of product photography. Like, what's the first thing that you're going to think about in that process?
Lighting.
Lighting again, similar to
Always lighting. Yeah.
similar to drawing.
I mean, yeah, if you're going to like do a picture of something in a studio, lighting.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's the thing that I think is interesting is that with drawing, it is step one of, get this thing in your mind's eye the way it really is. And step two is kind of set the structure and the bounds, which, I guess there's probably other components to it, but like lighting being a pretty prominent one. And in photography, it's like, well, you don't need your mind's eye. It's there. You physically have the thing. And then step two is lighting.
And if it's, I mean, and like maybe your mind's eye thing plays in differently if you're photographing something out in an environment or like, doing more like practical set design or something like that. But if you've just got like, like a seamless backdrop and you've got a milk carton and you just got to take a picture of that, and you just put it there at the angle that you need to capture. If we're talking about product photography, what side or sides of the milk carton need to be shown? Like what portions of that content do you like? What portions of that product do you need to see? And then you just light it. You get it lit properly, and you light it more than you think you need to, because it's way easier to work with more light than less.
Okay, so yeah, we just we took a break, made some coffee. Shout out to Deeper Roots, who has been involved in our creative endeavors probably more than they know.
Yeah, honestly. Wow, yeah, that's hilarious to think.
On many different levels.
Yeah, they are the gas.
Yeah.
They are the gas.
Son of a bitch, I got my cable. Okay, so we were talking about drawing. Mark came and confirmed that the first step of drawing a milk carton after you get the structure and stuff,
the missing child.
Yeah, let's talk about photography for a little bit. So like when was the first time that you like touched a camera that you can remember?
With any like capacity of understanding and like effort to compose something, I have like vivid memories. So my dad used to have this little like Pentax like adventure camera, and it was really small. Like it's probably like the size of like one of those Sonys or like the Ricoh. But it had this little like plasticky like armory shell around the corners of it, and it was waterproof. And it was not by any means a nice camera, but it had all these cool little modes on it. Like it had the little miniature mode and like all the different like shooting modes. Was not in any way like a manual control camera. But we used to go to the Florida Keys with like some people on my dad's side of the family, and we go snorkeling and like
shout out Ernest Hemingway.
And yes. And like lobstering and like just like screwing around like on the just at like docks and beaches and seeing iguanas and all this kind of shit, all this cool stuff. And man, I remember like one of these trips, I had that camera like glued to me, and I can't remember how old I was. I would say I was probably in like 7th or 8th grade. And man, like, yeah, just like I have like a vivid memory. I wonder if I could dig this photo up in any way. It might be like, I wonder if it's like in the annals of my Facebook or something. Of like a little like rusty ass Hot Wheel car that I just found there on like somewhere. And
when was this, by the way? Like what, how old were you? What?
Oh, like I said, it was probably like 7th or 8th grade.
Okay.
I don't know what the age is of that, but either way. And yeah, I just remember like carrying around that little Pentax action camera like the whole time I was there, and like just taking pictures of random stuff. And like that, yeah, that's probably that comes to mind the first time that I was like intentionally using a camera.
Do you remember your thought process in any of the photos at all, or were you just like pointed at stuff? And
I mean, like I said, like I found like a little like Hot Wheel car on the ground that was like kind of rusted and worn out, like it had been exposed to salty air and stuff like that. And I remember putting it on something, whether it was like a picnic table or just the ground or something, and taking a picture of that. Because I was like, oh, this thing looks cool. Like, look at the texture on the like paint of this and XYZ. So that was definitely, I felt like in my mind that was like a time where I was like intentional about using a camera. real creative process, probably not.
Yeah.
Like, but like I said, like actually picking up a camera and using it, like taking some random, like probably terrible pictures of like coral reefs under the water and stuff like that. So yeah, that was probably the first time in my mind.
And then, so what was the jump from like, oh, you've got this little camera that you're, kind of taking around in Key West, to like doing it more seriously, just at any level?
I mean, after that, I really didn't, because I didn't have like a solid camera in any capacity. I don't know what happened to that little Pentax. I would be curious to see if it's still like lingering around at my dad's or something.
See if you can dig it up, and
that'd be really cool.
Shoot some stuff on it.
That would be really cool, honestly. I would love to do that.
Do some street photography.
It'd be a hell of an action camera. But anyways, yeah, I took I mentioned earlier, I took photography in high school. I took 2 classes, and that was probably I took 2 classes, and I got my first actual camera for Christmas one of those years, and it was like a Nikon like D50-100, so like a crop sensor, just digital, like however many like small megapixels camera, and but it had removable lens and had like full manual controls and all that stuff, and I ran that like all the way into college and like through my time interning at City Beat and all that stuff.
Was that the same camera that was like some of the stuff we did the early Heatskr shit on?
No.
Okay.
No, I had upgraded at that point. I think.
Because I thought we did a couple of things.
Wait,
and then like
no, you're right. I think
because I remember you getting the one.
I think like the first fight we shot. Yeah. Because I think the second one I was like, oh, I'm nervous. I've got this new camera. Oh. Yeah. No, I think you're right. Yeah, I definitely use that a little bit, which is hilarious. I mean, and it does the job. It's fine. And if you know how to process stuff the right way, like I've had plenty of things published by City Beat.
Yep.
On that camera. But I think the big jump in seeing that it was something that I enjoyed and like, like framing and composing stuff was, like I said, like taking those classes in high school. And then after I took those in high school, I kind of fell back out of it. In terms of like frequently, just like getting reps in. And then, I was in school. I, started out at UC, kind of bumbling around different majors and like not really knowing what I was going to do. And I had the camera and I still took pictures of stuff, but not quite passionately, I guess, just not very heavily. But yeah.
So what, do you have like a favorite thing to shoot? Like, what do you want to shoot more of? Because like I know up at the top of this conversation, you said you've been busy doing a lot of work and stuff. But like, what's something that you would want to do more of in an ideal scenario?
So honestly, the thing that's been in my mind as of late, and I haven't really like actualized it. Like also, I have just not been picking up a camera much. Besides like, oh, like the light looks cool, like hitting this area at this time of day, and just like snap a little picture of it. I still like just absolutely nerd out. Like I'm a slut for light. It's just so neat. Like it's like probably like my favorite thing. But like this is kind of like higher level. So I haven't really been thinking of things like very granularly, but like getting to like be able to like help craft like a brand or style and like capture kind of like what that looks like has been in my mind.
Do you have a particular like industry or like like a clothing brand or like a motive, like anything in mind that sticks out?
Not really. Honestly, not really. I'm kind of like open, like, yeah, gutter cleaning products, probably not, like, that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of, like I said, it's been so like high level and not like granular enough that I've been like pretty ambivalent and like just kind of
What
generally
types of things
interested.
do you think you would want to capture to get that brand essence or whatever the term is you want to use?
I love like it would be so cool, and I think this kind of like harkens back to like I've always been into like the outdoorsy stuff.
Mhm.
So like like gear would be awesome. Like
Mhm.
getting to be like, oh, let's take this like climbing harness and this jacket and backpack and like get it dirty as shit and throw it out in the field in like a pile of like rocks or in some something
Mhm.
and get some like cool like environmental like use case photos of stuff like that.
Mhm.
That's very cool to me. And like I've got an uncle that does like that same thing right now. He like pretty much runs brand like visuals for he's done stuff for like a lot of outdoors brands, and like that's always been something I've like hugely looked up to. He's always been like a huge kind of inspiration in terms of like career path and so on. So yeah, I mean like I say like really I'm kind of open to all kinds of stuff. I think like just like gear and that kind of thing
like
is
some
very
sort of
cool. Or like kitchen stuff. Like like get a messy ass kitchen where you've just like made a bunch of food and you've got like
the one that's 10 feet behind us,
Yeah.
basically.
yeah yeah that kind of thing. It's very cool to me. But yeah, I'm at this point I'm just like very, like I said, high level. I'm not given enough thought to it at any like really really like detailed point.
You're just kind of letting the idea marinate a little
Fester,
bit.
yeah.
Fester, yeah. Okay. I'm trying to think if I've got I guess if you're out like doing street photography, or even if you're like, let's say, out on a shoot for like an outdoor brand, doing some lifestyle stuff, like what do you look for? I know that's a very vague, broad question, but like I'm wording it that way intentionally.
So there is in like photojournalism, there is a like a big term that like every photojournalism student will always hear. It's from a photographer named Henry Cartier-Bresson, and it is the decisive moment. And I feel like I always in the back of my mind look for that, and like that's kind of I like really got my teeth sharpened like shooting event coverage and stuff like that. So
how would you define that? Like, how do you know what to look for when you're looking for the decisive moment?
You don't it's dependent upon like the environment and the situation and like context to what's happening.
Well, here's maybe a better question to ask you. What's an example of a photo that comes to mind that you've taken that you feel has captured that?
So one big one that just pops to my mind. I was shooting the Pride Festival here in Cincinnati a couple of years ago when I was with City Beat. And there was like this big like I don't remember who it was branded by or whatever. There was this like big installment of like this crazy like tricycle thing that had a trailer and like this big banner and just like tons of people around. And there was a person in drag, and they were like just like crazy makeup, like gorgeous outfit, just like really beautiful textures and so on. And there was like some families, and like I want to say there was like some little kids around, and like this person was just like throwing this like fucking baller pose in front of this like big tricycle thing. And I got a picture of that, and like just the way that like the light is, and like the way that like the crowd and like the environment is layered, and like people like giving attention to this person, I felt like was like a really just like ideal, like really distinctly captured like instance of just like that whole thing. And I thought that was really cool. And that just always sticks in my head. Like, I think that will like remain indefinitely in my, like front page of my portfolio because of just, I don't know. It's just really sharp to me. It's like drilled into my mind. But you know, it could be anything like, you know, you could be just earlier, you know, we saw that car drive by and like the kid stopped and like rolled his windows down and like took a picture of Mark's car. Like you could get like a decisive moment picture of like that kid just like you're down there, you get like a 3/4 view of Mark's car and you get that kid like wide angle off to the side, just like gawking. And I would, you know, I would say that like in some level kind of falls into that category.
Is it something that you in the moment, you know, you've captured it, or is it something that you find when you're looking back through stuff?
I think it can be both. I definitely think I've seen some images after I've taken them where I've been like, wow, like I missed this little thing happening in one side of the frame, or like, you know, a lot of like fight photos. I feel like that's one where you're just like, you are run and gun.
Yeah,
like,
you don't have the time to try and find.
Yeah,
like,
you can't like you're like, okay, framing, that's it. Framing, focus, and that's it.
Yeah, it's well, it's a sport that's so like on the edge of something of that that decisive moment in a fight.
Oh my God,
can happen
I've got another one.
Any point in time.
Yes,
you know,
I have another one that is like hardcore ultimate like textbook decisive moment. Oh, this is awesome. Okay, so back when I was in college at UC, we went to the Trek Cyclocross World Cup in Wisconsin at Trek HQ. And I was racing downhill one day at like a place about 30-45 minutes away, and then cyclocross racing at Trek HQ like the whole rest of the weekend. Met Gary Fisher there. Legendary, such a cool experience. Saw all kinds of crazy stuff, crazy circuit. Like the course was absolutely wild, beautiful, dry, dusty, like, you know, warmish weather. A certain person who was a half of a pair of twins who was not legal at the time got shit housed. But decisive
shout
moment.
If this
Bill,
if this individual is listening, and we know that you are, I don't know what to say past that, but
we'll just say Bill.
What up? Shout out.
Say Bill.
Shout out Bill.
Shout out Bill. But this is awesome. Ellen was racing, and there was a like this one place where there was like a right hand turn, I think, and it like hits the bottom and it comes up a hill. And
I think I know the photo that you're talking about.
And in her race, there was a pile up of people, and she had to dismount, and she like made it around it and got ahead of this pile up. And I have just this like awesome shot of her running, like pushing her bike, running up the hill with this like just clusterfuck pile of wrecked bikes and people behind her. And she just has the biggest shit-eating grin on her face. And like, the only thing that could have made that more cyclocross is if it was 40 degrees and like muddy and snowing outside.
And an awful experience.
Yeah, but that is like absolute ideal. You know, just like capturing the like full, just unmolested essence of like what that environment and situation and like time and place was. Definitely that. Yes.
Is there anything that you do? Because you've done, I guess for those who don't know, which is probably anybody listening, because I don't think we talked about it. But or maybe we touched on it a little bit, but, you know, did some photojournalism stuff in school, did a lot of like event coverage. Is there anything in particular that you will like find yourself gravitated towards at an event when you're trying to find those kind of moments, or what, like, is there an energy that you can follow? Is there I guess, how do you choose to look for that moment or position yourself to be in the right place? Because I think that that's a lot of it, right? Is that you just kind of have to be in the right place at the right time a little bit. And be prepared for it. But like,
that's definitely a big part of it. You know, with like the event coverage stuff, there's always sort of like a checklist of like kind of things you want to get. You know, you want to see you want big pictures of the space. You want, you know, tighter details of things happening in the space. You want to see the people there. You want to see like a sense of scale and that kind of thing. But, you know, there's not, in my mind, like, and of course it changes, you know, it changes completely. Like if it's something like a food festival, you know, maybe you stand around, if you see a food vendor that's got just a line that's, you know, just overshadowing every other place around it, and you just hang out there for a little bit and you see what they're dishing out. Maybe you've got some dude in the tent who's like slinging a wok the size of like a car tire, and he's like got fire licking up over the edges of the pan, and he's like flinging shit in the air and stuff. Like, you know, maybe that's what you're chasing. Or like maybe I'm shooting Danger Wheel and like you got some dude flying down the hill and like racing leathers on like an adult big wheel trike. And like, you know, it varies by what the event is and what the, you know, it depends on the context of where you are. I don't think that there is really any necessarily decisive way to lock in on like where you need to be or what you need to look for in any given place to capture that kind of thing. You just, you know, keep your head up, move fast, press the shutter button a lot, you know, take a lot of pictures. I swear, like when I would go to any single given event, an event, like not just like capturing a space or like a restaurant or something like that. I mean, I'm taking like 300 to 500 photos in just like one event and then just whittling down. And that's just kind of the way of the road. Like that's,
yeah. I think that's how it goes with anything, is that like, if you, I mean, if you need, to talk, you know, Rick Rubin in the Creative Act book, he talks in that like, oh, do you need 40 songs or do you need 10 songs and make 40?
Yeah.
You know, like that kind of stuff. I think that that's kind of how it goes with anything you're doing.
Yeah.
With those like photos, like the two examples you gave or any others that come to mind, do you feel like you were, cause I noticed you mentioned like, you know, keep your head up and move fast. Do you feel like you were at those events when you got those shots moving from spot to spot more in search of it? Or do you feel like you were sitting in a spot waiting for it?
It kind of varies, you know. At Pride, I was definitely kind of like meandering around and like taking the place in, and like a lot of those things where you don't necessarily have like a time limit. I think there's something to be said about spending some time kind of wandering around and getting your bearings and seeing what is happening at a place or an event, and like kind of getting a sense of like sort of like a heat map of things and seeing like where people are focused, what's happening,
Where the activity is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, you never know, like maybe one of the big things to show is that something there is being neglected. Like maybe there's a tent or table or a group of people that there ain't shit there, you know, there's nothing happening. And maybe that's telling. Or, you know, like at a cyclocross race, especially at like the Trek World Cup, you know, huge course, a lot of features, a lot of opportunities to get really cool shots of things. You know, I would say you spend some time at each place, but you got to move kind of fast. So, you know, that corner where I got that picture of Ellen, you know, hang out there for a bit, get some shots of people passing on a lap or two, move to a different spot, and get some pictures of Ben Horn jumping a cyclocross bike somehow. But yeah, I again, you know, I feel like I'm defaulting to this over and over. I feel like it depends on the event and it depends on the context of what you're doing. But I think ultimately like getting a real like sense of like where you are, like getting your bearings and kind of understanding, like I said, kind of like a heat map of like where, what the place is and what the event is, and
getting a structure,
getting a structure and having kind of like a map in your head of like, okay, maybe I'm going to take like a meander around at first and just, you know, use that as the opportunity to get like the bigger shots that show the space, show the area.
And so when you're doing that and when you're looking for like those spots, are you looking for composition, or are you looking for activity?
Maybe a little both. I would say maybe primarily activity, to be like, okay, this place has like potential to be, like a little bit of a treasure trove, right? But then, it past that, I would say that in terms of like event coverage, the thing that matters more is getting the activity.
Yeah.
From a perspective of like from a journalistic perspective. And I say that lightly, like journalistic doesn't have to mean like it's getting published somewhere. It doesn't have to mean that you're shooting on behalf of a paper or a magazine or a web publication.
Mm-hmm.
Just from the perspective of like capturing information and like capturing that and relaying it and getting it in a way that is able to like accurately convey what's actually happening or conveying a process. I would say that the activity is more important than the composition. So you find where the activity is, and the composition is something that you have to work with in that kind of confine.
Yeah, you have to figure out how to make that work.
Yeah,
because you don't have the luxury of, like in product photography, right? You don't have the luxury of a backdrop and lighting and framing the object. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, even just like street photography or something, it's the exact opposite probably.
Yeah.
At least in my mind, like if I'm going to go out and shoot street photography, I feel like you focus a lot on people, and on my end, I focus a lot on like structure and shape and light and like texture. So I'm like always looking for like patterns or nice shapes and lines and stuff. And activity and people kind of is second to me, and like composition is more what I pay attention to.
So then when you're out like at an event or like, well, let's kind of keep it in the context of event, because I think street photography will give a little bit different of an answer. That I'm curious about. But when you're in an event and you're, let's say you're in a space, you've kind of identified the activity and you're shooting in a location for a little bit, or you're shooting in a couple of different locations. Like, how are you thinking about composition? Like, are you just kind of winging it on what looks good there? Are there key ideas that you'll try and like look for and see if they fit, or like, what does that process look like for you?
I mean, to a degree, there is some winging it. Cause like I said, it like the composition is sort of like secondary to the like the information gathering of like showing like what's happening. But, like really elementary, straight frames, rule of thirds, like that kind of thing, especially for like the air quote journalistic stuff. Make sure you're capturing that like sense of scale right and the sense of perspective properly, and you're, you don't have I'm a big stickler for like trying not to like cut people's like tops of heads or feet off. Like I try to do what I can to like capture full body when I can, and that kind of thing. So
I've had photos ruined by that, like where I can't see anything other than the fact that I've like cut something out of the frame. And I'm like, fuck, well, that's it.
Yeah.
It's that photo.
Can't use that one. Yeah. Honestly, like that's probably the big things. And then past that, like if you have like something cool in the shot that you can frame through, or, maybe you catch something happening like over someone's shoulders. Like that's always really cool to capture. And, I think a lot of the compositional components, when I think back to just some of the like more exciting events that I've shot, is like people reacting to things as like a big compositional component, as like it's like texture in a background.
Yeah, like you've got the subject, but then there's also like some context to the subject.
And then there's people like hands up screaming, or like, some like dude with like a beer in his hand, or, something like that. I don't know. But I would say it really like it's like a lot more in my mind like elementary in terms of like the journalism-y stuff, where it's, make sure you're capturing that information properly, and like get that, get the like foundational rules of composition good, and like make sure stuff is lit well. Like honestly, lighting.
It's the secret. Is I've had a couple people ask me like, or like say things of like, oh, I've got a camera, I'm thinking about shooting X, Y, or Z, or whatever. I go, just look for light.
Yeah.
It's all you really got to do.
Yeah.
Like anything past that doesn't matter, especially if it's just for you. If you're not like photographing for like product photography or like an event for somebody, you know, if you just go shoot light, you'll just point a camera at light enough and you'll get interesting things just by the law of numbers at a certain point, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Light is important. It's how we see things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think I've got anything else. Anything else you want to touch on?
Lighting is important.
That's the key takeaway.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and nothing else, lighting is important.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah,
Truly.
I think that's it. You want to wrap it? You want to plug anything? I don't know. For all of the people this will reach.
Yeah. No, not really.
Sick.
I don't really have no plugs on my end.
Cool. Well, that is it then. Wow, good job. You made it to the end. Thank you for listening this far into this podcast. I'm sure that's good for my engagement metrics or whatever the algorithm overlords are interested in. Check out the description for any show notes, links to the information about the guest or myself and this podcast. And yeah, that's it. Am I done recording these intros and outros? I think I am. And yeah, that's it. I don't really know what else to say, so just gonna leave it here.